Welcome to Convicted Hearts. I'm Jen Magana, your host, and I am back with another interview. This one I am very excited for. I've been waiting to meet with this gentleman right here, and I have him here today. How are you, Julio?
I'm doing well.
Doing well. Yeah, you've had a busy week, so I'm like really honored to have you here with me.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I believe it's important to bring awareness to trauma and lifestyle, whatever it is, So
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Right, right. All of the above. Like those are important topics and that's kind of my passion with things too. So that's why your story really intrigued me, from what I had seen on social media. But why don't we just start out for the people that are going to catch this and where are you originally from and tell me a little bit about your younger years.
So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, right around the mid city area. A lot of gangs, like every other block is like a gang. I grew up in that area. So So I'm just gonna go back all the way to my childhood, like about the age of 3. My father passed away from cirrhosis of the liver. It was a tragic event, My mother, I mean, of course, she relied on him. She relied on him a lot, and she had to step it up, So that meant me and my sister taking care of each other. Around the age of 7, my stepfather came into the picture, and so my mom ended up having kids with him like a little further on, and that's kind of like when my life changed a little bit. At the beginning, it was like a beautiful thing, He showed us love, affection, and attention, but that kind of shifted towards his own children after that. And what I started to do to get that attention was make my little brothers cry and stuff like that. So I kind of like figure like some attention is better than no attention, right? So that's
Yeah,
kind of like where it went. And
right.
so let me see. So as far as that part, so my mother ended up having 2 more children, my little brother David and my little brother Danny, and so soon, like I kind of didn't feel like I was loved at home. So
Mhm.
of course I resorted to the streets, and at that time I was probably around like 12 years old. But it was more like just hanging out with kids out there in the streets. We began being taggers, riding on everything that we could, but just
Yeah.
being like little badasses, like riding go karts, mini bikes, and I mean that childhood was pretty cool because I don't think that kids grow up that way anymore. I mean, as far as like the mini bikes and the go karts. So it was
Yeah.
pretty fun, but at the same time, we were constantly being chased by the police, and we were just starting to not really care about anything. Um,
Hmm.
so at the age of 14, those same friends that I grew up with, they started hanging out with gang members and soon became gang members. Um, I never joined the gang. However, it's like if I was embraced into the neighborhood just because of who I knew. So my stepfather, when he came from Mexico, he lived at a house with like a bunch of paisas, right? And at that house, there was the lady he used to rent from. Her son was a gang member, and he would bring his gang friends, and they would just all hang out and drink. So my dad, he started becoming cool around them. So whenever he would bring those gang member friends around me, they would always say, "Oh, that's David's son." But they would say it in Spanish, but of course that was David's son. So they never like pressured me to get into the gang, but however, like they had my back, and it felt good, because
Mhm.
what my dad wasn't giving me, now I felt like these gang members were giving me, which was like, which was cool. That's all I wanted, some kind of attention, some kind of recognition. That was
Right.
my thing.
Yeah, so it's like they embraced you, and I'm
Yes.
sure that did feel good, as a young man, a young boy. Most
Yeah.
definitely.
No, definitely. And so soon after, I started dressing different. You could see it in
Mhm.
the way that I started dressing. I have pictures, and my pictures are like, wow, what happened here?
Yeah.
And looking back, right, like compared to how I dress now, and looking back, I'm like, man, I look like a chuntaro back then. I don't know why I was dressing that way, right? But
Uh,
but I mean, you live and you learn, right?
that's true. That's true. We definitely do. Can you remember, hanging out, like you said, in the neighborhood with people, can you remember a feeling of, realizing that you were hanging out with people that could potentially put you in a situation that you could get in trouble with the cops, or did you realize what was going on?
So you know what? It's as crazy as it sounds. I thought I was like unstoppable. Like that wasn't gonna happen to me. Like,
Yeah.
of course, I would hear about friends getting locked up and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
I was like, I'm not from the gang, you know. I'm like, when it's the moment I see the police hit the corner, like I'm already hitting gates like through the back of somebody's house or something. So I felt like I was slicker than that. And it's a trip, right? Because the first time I was in jail was for I think it was a warrant failure to appear at court or something. So I got arrested in my truck, and I just did like a day or whatever, paid the little fine, and I was good. But I was already like 21, 22 years old. So usually like you hear about like people getting arrested early on, like 14, 15, 16, juvenile hall, YA or whatever. But somehow I made it through all that. And I started carrying a gun as early as 14 years old. And the reason I started carrying a gun is because I remember that some guy from a different neighborhood we shared neighborhoods with, um he ended up socking me. And at that moment, like I blacked out. And when I woke up, everybody was laughing, like, oh, you got jumped, you got beat up. Everybody was laughing, right? So I said, you know what? From this moment on, this is never gonna happen to me. So going back a little back, right? My dad used to play soccer. And I remember that they had a riot with the other soccer team. So one of my dad's teammates ran to his car, and then he ran back, and he had a big old revolver. I think it was like a 357 Magnum, right? And he shot it in the air, and everybody just dispersed. Everybody got scared and they ran. And so I learned something very important, even though like I was kind of scared at that moment, but I also
Hmm.
learned like like how you can have control if you have a gun.
Yes.
So after I got socked and I bought myself a gun, and even though it was just a little 25, the first thing I did with it, I didn't even tell my friends I had it. We were riding bicycles in the neighborhood, and I just pulled it out and started shooting it in the air, and like the same kind of like thing what he did, right? Shoot it in the air, and my friends were scared. They thought we were getting shot at, but then they seen me and they're like, "Oh, fool, you're crazy! You're crazy! What the hell are you doing?" So
Hmm.
that one little particular event gave me a reputation for always carrying a gun and being crazy, and that carried on
Hmm.
throughout my childhood. They always knew that like, hey, don't mess with them dudes because they're carrying guns already.
Yeah. So it kind of gave you, did it feel like a little bit of like, okay, they feel like I'm with it, so people won't really try me, or if
Yeah, so it
that.
was like it was kind of like more like a respecting, like, hey, be careful. These dudes are serious. They're young and they're already carrying guns. And the
Right.
biggest thing too is like somebody that's not from the neighborhood and has that, like they
Hmm.
want you to be from the neighborhood, but at the same time they respect it. Be like, he like, you know what, he's made his decision. He doesn't want to be from the hood, but look at
Hmm.
him. He's doing what he has to do.
Right. That's interesting to hear. That you were in a position where you kind of like ran with your neighborhood, but you weren't like all the way in. So I like that you're bringing that up, because a lot of people speak about being either in or out, but I have spoke with people that have been in positions like you were in, and I think that followed throughout your life as things went on, right?
Yeah, it really did because no matter what, like they of course they gave me a nickname and they made me a part of like their clique type of thing, even
Mhm.
though they considered me from the neighborhood, but I never really initially got jumped in, and which
Mhm.
is which is kind of like strange and odd, right? But just my
Mhm.
mentality of how it was back then. They were like the homies down, and you know what? I also had like this guy I used to look up to. He used to tell me like, you know what, like I trust you more than I trust my own homeboys because I know you're with it. And
Right.
at the same time, like after feeling rejected from my father and my stepfather,
Mhm.
Like I never wanted to be rejected. So whenever somebody gave me some kind of accolade like that, like I gravitated towards that and I wanted to be a part of like, you know what, this is what I want because they gave me validation.
Yes, most definitely. I feel like that's so important when we're young. I mean, even when, as an adult, it feels good, right? But when we're young, it makes all the difference in the world feeling validated
Yeah,
by
definitely.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was it like the first, the first time you were arrested? What was that like for you?
Um, it was like surreal. I went to the county jail, LA County Jail, and it wasn't really. I wasn't like. I think I was at a courthouse or something like that, and I just. So I think I got locked up in at the police station. I spent the night. The next thing you know, I went to the courtyard, and then like later on the day, I got released. My ex girlfriend like picked me up, right?
Mhm.
But just being there and seeing like all these people, like they're bald and like full gang members, and so I was kind of like a little bit like intimidated, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I was like, man, this ain't shit, like bring it on, because I did see people like stressed out and talking about like, oh my God, they're going to give me all this time. But maybe because the fact that I knew that I wasn't going to be there for long, I was just kind of like
Mhm.
whatever about it. But but yeah, that changed when I got sentenced to my real crime, and I bet you probably want to talk about that a little later.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get into that. How many times would you say you were arrested or had a run in with the law before you caught that real crime or your term?
So before I committed my crime, I was arrested once, and I would always get pulled over and stuff like that,
Mhm.
but they never had anything on me, right?
Okay.
So, but that was just that one time that I got arrested. Other than that, I never got arrested for like carrying a weapon or anything like that. I mean,
Okay.
I ran from the cops several times, but they never
Mm.
they never matched one with one. They never put it together.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So leading up to that point, um, let's say, how old were you when you did end up catching your crime? And let's kind of get into that and what that entailed.
So, I was 25 years old when I committed my crime. What led up to that was I got shot August of 2006 by a rival gang. And this gang that we were going at it with was like, these were like righteous enemies. It was like one of the first Mexican gangs going at it with the Afro American gang, right?
Okay.
And the beef was like huge. Constantly people being murdered. It was really bad. So I was actually going to a Bank of America and they had like a drive-through. And when we pulled up in the alley, I noticed that there was two cars riding on the walls, right?
Mhm.
And as I approached them at first, I was kind of like, what's going on, right? But then I was like, you know what? So I popped my stash spot open. I grabbed my gun, and but I was still driving towards them, and because I didn't want to stop it, kind of like startle them. But as soon as they
Mhm.
seen us, they were Bloods. I had a blue truck, so we automatically either Crips or I don't know what they're thinking we are because
Right.
they can't really see in my truck. I have dark tinted windows. My headlights were like those HID lights where when I pulled up in that alley, more than likely they were blinded by the lights. That's how bright they were, and
Yeah.
so they just started shooting at me. There was two different guns. They shot at me. It was four of us in the truck. It was like an extended Silverado truck, and I was the only one that got shot.
Mm.
So I remember when they started shooting, I lifted up my arm like this and just ducked to the side, right? But just pressed on the gas and just got up out of there. And what I was trying to do is get out of the way, and then I try to open the door because I already had my gun. I tried to open the door with my left hand, but my hand collapsed. And I realized, like, wow, they shot me on my hand. So I put my gun down on my lap and I reached out with my right hand to open the door. So when I jumped out to try to shoot at them, they were gone already. They were nowhere in sight. So
Mm.
I drove back to my house. I was on a flat tire. I had like big rims on my truck. There was like a flat tire and like all these gunshots all over the car. Like the back window was shattered, and so that's the event that led up to my crime. And I say
Mhm.
that it led up to my crime because obviously, like I said before, I had this reputation for being violent and aggressive, right? um when this happened to me, I thought that my reputation was diminished. Like, you know what, like they're seeing who I really am, and in my mind I was like this scary dude, like, but I
Mhm.
was hiding behind the gang and the guns and all these different things. And when I got shot and didn't do anything about it, I'm like, oh, my friends are gonna think I'm a punk. My friends are gonna think I'm a B, I don't want to say the word, but
Mhm.
I'm a
Yeah.
B or whatever. And I didn't want them to see me that way. I still wanted them to fear me. At first, I thought it
Mhm.
was respect, right? But I wanted them to fear me. So I believe that my reputation was diminished. And three months after that, on November 6th of 2006, that's when I committed my crime. We got invited to a wedding, and we were in the South Central area. We were actually waiting for like two more cars to pull up and go to this wedding, right? So my friend was like, "Hey, just park in my driveway." So the ass of my truck was like sticking out into the street.
Mhm.
So me and my co-defendant, we jumped outside. We went towards the backyard, and we were smoking a blunt, a marijuana blunt. And he had went inside to go get us a beer, and we are gonna start drinking our beer and smoking our blunt. And when he comes running to us, and he's like, "Hey, they just hit your truck." And at first I was kind of like shocked, like what? But at that moment, I was like very impulsive, right? I ran to my truck, my co-defendant followed me, and we jumped in my truck. But now looking back, I felt like that was he kind of like challenged me. And what I heard in my own little head was like, "Hey, you punk, aren't you going to do nothing about it? They just hit your truck." Because I was still holding
Mhm.
on to being shot and not doing anything about it. So I'm like, okay, so is this a repetition?
Mhm.
Now they hit your truck, you're not going to do nothing about it. So I immediately jumped in my truck, and we started going after this car. We like immediately caught up to them. So I
Mhm.
guess when the car passed by, he hit my truck with the rear view mirror. I guess they weren't paying attention or something like that, right?
Mhm.
I know it sounds very petty, but that's just my truck was the split image of who I wanted to be. Like I felt like very
Mhm.
insecure. I felt very like ashamed of myself. But when I jumped on my truck, it had nice big rims and just made me feel good about myself, right?
Yeah.
So we followed them. We went after them. We hit like this alley. We caught up to them like really fast, and I hand the gun to my co-defendant. My co-defendant sticks he sticks his head out the door. I mean the window, I'm sorry, and he starts shooting. He shot about three times and then the gun jammed. After
Mhm.
that, it was just stuck, the gun jammed. So I took the gun from him because of course it's my gun, right? And in my mind, again, you don't know how to work my gun. Get out of here, like I unloaded the clip, I took the jammed round off, and then I put a different clip down there. Now I put a 30 round clip. At first it was just like a 10-round clip. Um,
Mhm.
so I continued to follow this car, continue to follow them, and then when we finally came to a stop, we were like probably like a block away from the freeway. We finally came to
Mhm.
a stop, and so there was like two lanes in between us, and no cars actually pulled up, and they were stuck on their side too. But the way that we were set up, it was like I thought that I could shoot at them and get away with it. So
Mhm.
I unloaded 17 rounds on them, and I got into the turning lane, and the turning lane was on green. So I sped up, but instead of turning left, I turned into the main street and went onto the freeway. But what I didn't know that there was a cop on the other side on the intersection. So
Mhm.
he heard all the gunshots, and when he sees my truck like going really fast, he put one and one together, and it was like, oh, these are the people that just shot, or they're getting shot at, or something. But they were
Right.
following. So we jumped on the freeway. I was trying to like go really fast, trying to ditch the cops. And my thing was like, you know what, let's ditch the truck because they're gonna catch us no matter what, right? Like at least they're gonna catch my truck, so they're not gonna catch us. I'm gonna report the truck stolen. I'm already thinking ahead, right?
Mhm.
And
Okay.
so we jumped on the freeway. We got rid of the gun. We threw it over like this divider to where the cops couldn't even see where we threw it at, and they were kind of like a little behind. And so I sped up so fast and I went all the way literally to like the carpool lane. And then I realized, like, you know what? I need to get rid of these cops. So I got off right away on the first street. And what I didn't know, there was like this huge dip on as soon as you get off the freeway, because it's a
Mhm.
residential area. So they're not trying to have anybody like go like really, really fast in the residential area, especially getting off the freeway. So I was
Mhm.
going about 100 miles per hour. And, of course, I had those big rims. And when I hit that dip, I completely lost total control of the truck. I couldn't even stop it. So I ended up hitting like a car that was pulling off the freeway with me. And I hit like three other cars that were parked on the side. And
Mhm.
the airbags deployed. And we surrendered after that.
Yeah. So they were right there up on you when that
Yeah.
event happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
That had to be like, your adrenaline was just going and it had to feel so surreal in
Yeah.
that moment.
Yeah. It
Um,
was it was a crazy experience. I didn't think we were gonna get caught. Like I told you, like my
mhm,
work mentality told me like you can get away with everything, and then I felt untouchable. I had a stash pot in my truck. So
mhm.
like there's all these different things that made me think that nothing was ever gonna happen to me.
Right. Like you had it covered, you know? That it makes sense to me how I've heard people speak that way before and feel that way. And I like how you said, because I think people can learn from this that you felt as if your truck was like a sort of direct um it represented you and how you felt about yourself,
Mhm. Yeah,
you know?
it gave me value, because I was this insecure little boy that was very. I mean, there was a lot of shame going on because of
Mhm.
all the abuse that I endured when I was young. One of my stepfather's favorite words was "tienes mierda en la cabeza," which is translated "shit for
Mhm.
brains," right?
Yeah.
And that like really affected me. I really believe like that I was defective and stuff like that.
Right.
You don't tell a child something like that,
Right.
because it's I mean it's something that he'll grow up with for the rest of his life, right?
Yeah.
And you know what, like once I started working on myself, um
Mhm.
they say like in recovery it's about you, not the other person, to forgive
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So I actually confronted my stepfather about it, and I told him like, hey, I don't know if you remember, but you used to call me shit for brains. Oh, and the reason why I told him this is because the way he was talking to my little nephew. And I told him,
Okay.
please don't talk to him like that because it's going to affect him for the rest of life. He's like, what are you talking about? And that's when I brought it up. I was like, you know what? You used to talk to me a certain way and it affected me a certain way. And I ended
Mhm.
up, I'm not blaming it on that, right? But
Right, right.
one of the reasons, I guess basically one of the causative factors to committing my crime, it's like
Mhm.
things on top of things on top of things that led to that crime. And I was like, so be careful how you talk to the next person. He denied it, put my mom on the phone. She denied it as well. And
Mhm.
I was like, you know what? Forgiveness is about self, it's not about others. And I just let it go. I have a beautiful relationship with them now. And
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is.
Right. I think that's beautiful. You have to, I mean, for your own self, for your own growth and sanity, like sometimes we just have to accept it for what it is. You know what you heard, you know what you experienced. And sometimes people aren't always ready to meet us where we're at, and accept that. But, you learn from it for yourself.
Yeah.
So I
And
admire that.
thank you. And I think it's also like, I love what you just said, right? Because you do things for yourself. Sometimes we have to cut certain people off of our lives, because they're just not where we're at anymore.
Yeah.
I love my family and everything. Um, they can be dysfunctional, maybe sometimes even like very codependent with the relationships that they have. And I'm there for them. I love them. They were there for me throughout my incarceration and everything. But at the same time, I know what's healthy for me and what's not healthy for me. I know what my triggers are and what they're not. So like ideally, like living with my family would probably not be the best idea, because
Yeah.
now, I mean, I just love my freedom. Nobody really telling me anything, watching behind me. Just have to be at home by a certain time and all these different
Mhm.
things. But I guess
Yes.
all that maturity came with age and
That's
experience as
right.
well.
Exactly. Yeah. I can relate to that for sure.
Mm.
So, going back to the scene of, your truck crashes into these cars after the incident happened. Did you know in that moment that you had hit anyone, or did you have any comprehension of what went down exactly?
So like I'm like always hyper vigilant, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's sounds, anything I'm looking at, hearing, whatever it is, smelling and stuff like that. I heard one of the cops' radios saying that we apprehended the persons that shot the they just said the victims or whatever, and I was
Okay.
like, oh wow, so somebody got shot, you know. So I
Yeah.
really didn't know what had happened, but you know what? So they put us in the cop car, they took us away, and we were at the Glass House in downtown LA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they put us in a cell together, me and my co-defendant, and there was actually another person in there. And from where we were at, I mean, of course, you know, there's a phone in there. We started making phone calls, but you could like kind of like get on the side of the glass and look to the side, and there was a TV there, and you could
Mm-hmm.
literally see my truck that was crashed on the news, you know, and we couldn't really hear what was going on, but I seen like, you know, that there was a recording of like a shooting and the truck crashed into these cars and what had happened basically. But
Right.
while we were in that holding tank, I mean, first time really like facing some like real time and stuff like that. Me and my co-defendant like started talking about what happened, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And what we didn't know is that we were being recorded. That same recording was used to sentence us. Um
Really?
yes, so we were facing like, I think it was like 380 something years to like two strikes and like with life and all this different stuff, right? Um, my mom, I love her to death. Like she literally will do anything for me. She
Yeah.
refinanced her house, got me a lawyer that was like 50 grand. My crimey, I think he got a lawyer, and his lawyer was like 15 grand or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So like while we were going through the whole trial, and like the victims, they ended up going and telling on us,
Mm-hmm.
of course, you know.
Yeah.
And the best that my lawyer could do for us, I think he was like, you know what, I could probably get this DA to come down to 35 years to life. And to me, I mean, like in comparison to like 100 and something years to life, I'm like, wow, like I won't even live that far, you know. But
Right.
35 years to me sounded good, you know, like hell yeah. And we're
Mm-hmm.
paying you to do something for me. Of course, like I knew he wasn't gonna be able to just get me off completely, because the evidence that they have had against us is they had witnesses, they had all the shell casings inside of the car, and but they didn't have the gun. So they didn't even have any gunpowder residue on us, because like from watching movies and just hearing the homies talk and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, this is gonna sound gross. I asked to use the restroom while I was there, and I was
Mm-hmm.
pissing on my hands just to get all that gunpowder off of me.
Yeah.
So when the cop seen that, he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I'm like, nothing." So I just kept on, you know, rinsing my
Mm-hmm.
hands off and with piss and stuff like that. And he immediately cuffed me back up, and that's when they took us to try to take us to get the test, but it was
Mm-hmm.
already late. We had already washed all that stuff off. But they took our clothes, right? But when they were taking our clothes, they put us in a room with all these different people. And
Mm-hmm.
actually they never actually took our clothes and used it as evidence.
Uh-huh.
So what we did is, when all these people started coming in, we were like, hey, look, this is what we just got into. Do us a favor, let's trade clothes. So now we gave our clothes away to other people, and now here I am. Like I used to wear loose clothes, but not as.
Mm-hmm.
But now I look like a super down, super homie or something, like with this big old shirts, and I
Yeah.
have these khaki type of shorts that I would never wear in my life. And
Right.
but it kind of like fit with like the gang
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so the other people, they came up with like some at that time was like Rockaware, Levi's, and Jordans and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they took off with our clothes, and when they never could use the clothes as evidence as well. So
Wow.
we were just kind of like thinking outside the box a little bit, you know, trying to get away
Yeah.
with murder,
You
basically.
guys definitely were. So
Yeah.
that's interesting that that worked out in that way. Um, how did that go? As far as how long were you waiting before you went to trial, and what was that like?
You know what? It was a quick turnaround. As soon as they gave us the deal, we jumped on it, and literally, so I got incarcerated. No, I got it busted November 11, 2006. November, it was like right around November 11, 2007, when I was
Mhm.
already sentenced. So it literally just took 1 year. It was
Okay.
like fast. The process was fast. My lawyer said because of the recording and what we spoke about, like they really had like solid evidence, and then the
Mhm.
shell casings in the car, the witnesses and stuff, and so they
Mhm.
had a pretty good case against us. So yeah, it was literally like a year. So by I think by December, I was already catching the chain and going upstate already. I ended up I ended up in Lancaster, was there for like three
Mhm.
months, and then went straight all the way to High Desert State Prison. And at that time, High Desert State Prison, level 4, 180, that was one of the toughest prisons out there, right?
It was
And
on
of
and
course,
cracking.
one more time.
I said it was on and cracking at the time, I'm
Oh,
sure.
definitely. Yeah, there was Northerners on the yard, and me
Mhm.
being a Southerner, I started learning quick. Never been
Yeah.
to prison, and you know what? My first experience at yard, so I'm super like, what the, what's going on, and they do a lot of set tripping over there, right? So I'm from
Okay.
West LA. So anybody else from West LA, that's basically who you're gonna hang out with. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's your own enemies, but you become
Mhm.
friends because it's not about your gang no more. It's about representing the South Side, the Sureños, whatever.
Right.
Um, and so this guy, he was from Easy Riders, and I can't remember his name. His name was Richard, but I can't remember what they called him. But anyways,
Mhm.
we're hanging out at the against the wall at the handball courts, and we're just talking. And there's this guy on a wheelchair. His name was Joker. He's on the wheelchair just chilling or whatever. And
Mhm.
so this other guy from West LA starts talking to my friend Richard, right? And he's telling him, "Hey, you know that Keisha Cole CD you let me borrow? Hey, I think I scratched it, bro. Let me talk to you about it." And my friend was like, "I'm not tripping, bro. It's cool. It is what it is. If you scratched it, I mean, it's not like we could take the scratch off or something, right?" So he
Right.
was just like, "Whatever." But what we didn't know was that the other guy knew what was going to happen, and he wanted us to pull us away from the guy on the wheelchair because he was going to get stabbed pretty soon. So it turns out that the guy on the wheelchair, he had a R, which is a rape charge on his jacket, and they were going to come after him. So we ended up staying there. We were like, nah, bro, we're chilling right here. We're on the shade or whatever. We don't want
Mhm.
to go over there. So next thing you know, here comes this other dude, and bam, we start going to town. He knocked him down. He was on the ground. He got on top of him. He started stabbing him. They put the
Mhm.
yard down, and they start shooting with the block gun. They start shooting with the Mini 14, and it just started getting. It just turned up from 0 to 100 in less than 2 seconds, right? And my friend was like, literally, where I went down, it was like maybe 10 feet away from where everything happened. And my friend was like, "Hey, come over here, fool, come over here." So I started like crawling like in the army, trying to crawl towards him. And so the cops got there. They did this like little perimeter, and whoever was within like 50 feet,
Mhm.
they had to stay behind. They recalled the yard. So I'm like right there on the yard, and so they want to find out who else did it. Was it just a one on
Yeah.
one, or who else did this? So they start searching us. They stripped us down, looking for markings on our knuckles and stuff like that. Once they
Mhm.
see that we weren't involved, they ended up letting us go. But that was like my first experience, my first yard, and I was like, wow, this is gonna be the rest of my life. I got sentenced. I ended up getting sentenced to 35 years to life. Um,
Mm.
I was like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah, that's quite a welcome to high desert, right? Um, that's crazy.
Definitely.
What I mean, we hear stories about that prison in particular, and what a battleground it is. So I can only imagine being there, waking up there, going to sleep there. What is it? Something that kept you on your toes and heightened awareness, like day and night?
Oh, definitely. So there was like all these different things, like especially because our neighbors were Northerners, right?
Mhm.
And even though there was no beef at that time, right there, but they were
Mhm.
always known for not having too many numbers. And when they ever did do something, they were gonna do it in an element of surprise.
Mhm.
So at that time we used to still eat because the way that the building, I was in like in D1, and so D1 and D2, they used the same dining hall. The dining hall is right in between both of those buildings.
Mhm.
So at first, we have sections, right? A section, B section, C section. I think in cell 225 D1. So of
Okay.
course they did all the self feeding. I mean, no, I'm sorry, not self feeding. We're going to chow at that time. We used to
Mhm.
still walk to chow at a level 4, and every time we would go out there, we would have to be careful because these dudes are right there. So, and the cops wanted us to kind of like stay with ourselves, you know. So if it was like 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, they didn't want
Mhm.
us like waiting for the homies and bunch up, or they didn't want them doing the same thing. So most of the time we were sitting on the table with them and just talking to them, you know, trying to like have a fake conversation, really, because you
Right.
never know what might happen. So like, yeah, I'm gonna act like I'm cool, but in all reality, like we have stuff on us already, you know, because we never know
Yeah.
what might happen going to chow.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Is it I mean, I can only I'm trying to picture it, you know. I can imagine what that must have been like just as someone sitting back and hearing you speak, but that's got to be crazy, like being housed with people who are technically your enemies at the time. And I've heard from other people before. I'm curious what you have to say about this. Were there times before something was about to happen where you could actually feel it, like something's about to crack off?
So you learn patterns in prison, right?
Mhm.
You have a routine. You have yard dogs, and what I mean by yard dogs is like these certain shoes I wear, certain shorts I wear, a certain shirt I wear, because I mean, you're at yard, you know, you don't want to put on like your good stuff. So you have stuff for like day room and you have stuff for yard as well, right?
Right.
So one of like the biggest indicators for me was that was something was
Mhm.
gonna happen is when you used to see like the homies dressed in blues, like they would wear their state prison issued boots, pants, and shirt. And the
Mm.
reason they did that was because they didn't want to mess up their regular clothes. So they're like, more than likely, they're going to spray us with pepper spray, whatever it is. So they're not going to try to mess up their clothes.
The
And
good
so
stuff.
whenever I would see somebody dressed like that, if they weren't going to medical and they're waiting on their ducky to go to medical, I'm like
Mhm.
paying attention, like to who they're talking to, where they're going, because you never know what the hell, you know. It's like you can't even really like trust your own homies. It's not that I had like skeletons in my closet or anything like that, you know,
Mhm.
like I'm worried of them, but it's a dirty game, you know. Somebody could cross you up, whether it's a drug debt or something like that, and
Right.
he say she say, and next thing you know, you're getting beat up without having any
Mhm.
questions asked or nothing like that. But the
Yeah.
biggest indicator is like sometimes you would just feel it on the yard. It's like monotone. There's like nothing going on. It's like kind of like the noise you got going on. You could hear little frogs in the background or something, or crickets, you know?
Right.
You can't hear anything, and you're like, what the hell? This is something's going on. So out of courtesy, usually what people do is like if the Southerners are gonna do something, they'll let the Northerners know, they'll let the blacks know, the whites know. So everybody's basically up against the wall just looking, right? And
Mhm.
nobody's really like programming except for the guy that's gonna get it, basically, you know?
Ah,
So and sometimes they just don't pay attention to stuff like that. But
wow.
that's just how it was. It's sad. It's really, really sad.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a dirty game. You never know.
Yeah.
That's crazy. What was it like for you? I mean, that's a long ways from home. Did you ever get any visits from your
Oh man.
family?
So my actual first visit, um, my family went all the way over there, right? And
Mhm.
something had happened the night before, and we went on lockdown. So my family drove from Los Angeles all the way to Susanville,
Oh my
and when they
god.
get there, we're on lockdown. So
Yeah.
they only see me through the glass for like an hour or something like that, and then after that they ended up leaving. But the next time around when they did come and see me, I think I only seen them twice while I was at High Desert. Uh
Mhm.
and well, I seen them for like a full visit, and my mom was like completely in shock. Like my mom is like hilarious, right? Though I remember sitting next to this white boy, and the white boy had a huge middle finger behind his head tattooed, right? And my mom seen it, and she's like, "F you," to the white boy. And I was like, "Mom, you better stop! Like, you're gonna get me in trouble, you know."
Right.
So, so I mean, I had a good little visit, and one of the things that my mom, she's a criticona, she's always
Mhm.
like talking about everybody. She was like, "Oh my God, look at that guy! He's with that big girl and stuff like that." And I'm like, "Mom,
Yeah.
in prison, you just got to find somebody that loves you and go
Right.
hard." Right? So she used to clown me, and she used to be like, "When are you gonna find yourself a little chonchita, right?" And I'm like, "I don't think I could do it."
Right.
So so me being a clown and trying to make my mom laugh, like letting her know like that I'm okay, that I'm not in bad
Mhm.
spirits, nothing like that. So when like the visit was over, I noticed that everybody started kissing, like this is like
Mhm.
their goodbye.
Yeah.
So I was telling my mom when I called her on the phone, she's like, "So what happened? Did you find you a girl or nothing like that?" And I was like, "Well, I seen everybody kissing, and what I just did is I hugged myself and I pretended like somebody was hugging me and I started kissing myself." And she's like, "Oh, estás loco," and
Right.
she's like, "Soon I'm gonna find you a gordita," and I'm like, "Nah, mom, I'll pass. I'm good."
That's right, though. I mean, anything to like lighten the situation, make mom laugh. It feels good to do anything you can to lighten those moments, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So being there, how long were you actually at High Desert for?
I was only there for a year. So we got searched. There was like a big search. They were looking for weapons.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was kind of like a control thing. Like we already knew. The main thing they would say is like, "Oh, we're missing a sheet pan from the kitchen. Like, how do you get a sheet pan out of the kitchen?" But I mean, there is ways to do it, right? But
Mhm.
every time they wanted to come search, we would get on lockdown. So we went on lockdown, and during that lockdown, I ended up being by myself. I was in the cell by myself. So because when I first got to High Desert, there was a paisa in the cell with me. So
Yes.
the homies wanted me to be in the cell with another southerner, right?
Right.
And so they kicked the paisa out and put him with another paisa. And then somebody came out of the hole, and he ended up my roommate. So when the paisa left my cell, he took his mattress with him. So there was only one mattress in the cell. So when the cops noticed that, they went into a cell with a Moreno, and
Mhm.
they pulled out a mattress from his cell, and they ended up giving it to my roommate. So me, even in prison, like I started being a clean freak. Like at the
Mhm.
moment that I noticed that the cover on the mattress was like super filthy, I tore the mattress up. I washed it. I put it, I cleaned it, and
Mhm.
I didn't want to lay down on no dirty mattress like that. Even though they give us sheets and stuff like that, I was just clean.
Right.
So I told my roommate, like, "Hey, bro, like, let's do the same to your mattress." And he's like, "Look, fool, we're on lockdown. Like, let's just wait because they're gonna be dragging the mattresses on the tier, and after
Mhm.
that, I'll clean it or whatever." So I kind of wish he would have done that, right? Because when I opened my mattress, I found kites in there. I found like tobacco. I found like all these different things inside my mattress, and I'm like, "Damn, this is crazy." So like, I wonder what else they stick in those damn mattresses, right?
Yeah.
So we go. Oh, so actually, so when the cops came, my roommate was like, "Dude, look, this is what you do because they want to check the locker to make sure everything's intact, that there's no metal missing and stuff like that." So you grab all your property that's in your lockers and you put it on your bunk. You grab the mattresses and you put it in front of the door. Just kind of make
Mhm.
the job easier for the cops. And he's like, and sometimes they won't even, once they see that, they won't even mess with none of our stuff, bro. They'll just leave it
Mhm.
alone. And I'm like, all right, cool. So we did that, right? And I guess the way that we placed the mattresses in front of the door, so we walk out, we go we're in the kitchen, we're handcuffed. It's actually snowing outside, and we're
Mhm.
only in boxers and that's it. No socks, no shirt, no nothing. We're just in boxers, handcuffed for like hours, right? For till they
Mhm.
search. And two cops come and they're like, Julio, what was his name? I think Ernesto. They're like,
Mhm.
uh, cuff up. Well, no, actually, we're cuffed up already. They're like, come here. So we get up. They're like, you guys are going to a program office. And I'm like, program office? I'm like, oh, shit. Like, what did they find, right? So the
Right.
first thing they asked us is like, whose weapon is it? And I'm like, weapon? What are you talking about? They're like, there was a weapon in the mattress. So I guess they found this toothbrush, a plastic toothbrush inside one of those mattresses, and they pinned it on both of us. Uh,
Um,
we were and look, and against me being like very manipulative and liar and deceiving, right?
mhm,
We ran into squad, and squad was trying to do their investigation. They're like, oh, who you guys are going to stab and this and this and that. And I'm like, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Christian. I don't. He's like, didn't
mhm,
you know that back in the days the Christians used to kill people and stuff like that? And I'm like, I'm not that type of Christian. And he's like,
mhm.
yeah, right. So whatever, right? So they ended up putting us in the hole. They gave me a shoot term, a 16-month shoot term, and I ended up going to Tehachapi Shoe.
Yeah.
So even though I was going from a level 4 180 and now going to the shoe, it was actually a blessing, right? Because Tehachapi's in California City, and now that means I'm only like a couple of hours away from home, like maybe 2 hours, right? So
Mhm.
that was a blessing for me. And not just that, people used to say that people, when you land at high desert, you stay stuck at high desert. There's it's going to be like your points have to drop. You're
Yeah.
leaving a casket or something, but you're not leaving high desert, right? And so for them, sometimes they said that you go to the hole and they kick you right back out to the main line. But they picked me up, took me to the shoe, and then I did the rest of my shoe time because I think I was like at a high desert for like 9 months. They finally
Mhm,
picked me up, and got sent to Tehachapi Shoe. I did like 3 months or 4 months in the shoe, and
mhm.
um, and then they kicked me out to the main line right there, and I was pending transfer.
Okay. Okay. For people that might not know the difference, can you explain a little bit what is the shoe, or what's the difference between that?
So the shoe is basically a segregated housing unit. So when you commit so prison is just like mainline. You're
Mhm,
programming, going to school, working. You have a job. You're going to yard on a regular basis. So the segregated housing unit is basically jail for prison.
okay.
Um, this is where people that either stab somebody, or sometimes they put people that are like on protective custody. They put them back there
Mhm,
because they don't want them to get hurt, but they're pending transfer to go somewhere else. Some like the people that are real dangerous in prison, like the politicians, if
mhm,
they catch them with kites, and they're possible Mexican mafia members or whatever,
mhm.
Northern Riders or whatever it is, right? BGFs, they put them back there, and they segregate them basically to away from the main line to make it harder for them to control a prison or something like that.
Right. Kind of to
So it's like,
try to cut off communication and
exactly. So it's kind of like the worst of the worst.
okay, okay. I think people will understand that. Yeah. So, pending your transfer, where do you end up going after that?
So I was at Kern Valley State Prison, which is Delano.
Mhm,
And at that time, when I got there, the Northerners had actually just killed a homie, and so they were
mhm,
on lockdown when I got there. I got on lockdown for like 2 extra weeks, and then they finally released us. But what they were doing is they were sending the all the Northerners to the lower yard, and all the
mhm,
Southerners stayed on the upper yard. So they were just doing bad moves and stuff like
mhm,
that. And so there was no tension there no more because we were just amongst nothing but Southerners.
mhm,
But I ended up at Delano, and Delano was pretty interesting to me, right? 'Cause I got there in 2009, and I was there all the way till 2013,
mhm.
12 actually. Hold on, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it was 2012. And
Okay.
I've been to so many prisons. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Um, so when I got to Delano, they gave me a job as a porter.
Mhm,
And one of the things that I've learned from my mother is having a good work ethic. So no matter what, wherever I worked, I've always been like a very hard worker, right?
right.
And so I was a porter. Most of the time, we were on lockdown because it's level 4 180. Sometimes there was like these anonymous kites saying that the cops were going to get taken care. They were going to get stabbed
Mhm,
by a certain person or certain Southerners or blacks or something like that, and they'll have to do
mhm,
their investigation. And sometimes they'll come to search, sometimes they wouldn't. But most
mhm,
of the time, we spend our time in ourselves. But I was such a good worker. And by that time in the 180s, they weren't doing any more. We couldn't eat in between the buildings no more. Now it was like automatic. They had to come self feed us. So we
Mhm.
would push these big old carts with food in them already, and we would have to pass them out. So I had like my little crew of porters, and of course there were other Southerners, right? Because
Mhm.
they didn't like bringing like blacks, Southerners, and then whites all together. Because if we had anything going on against each other, we were going to do something against each other. So
Right.
even though I was on lockdown, they put me and my roommate, and he was another porter, and so we used to do the chow. So they would just bring the carts in the building,
Mhm.
and we would stack like four trays four trays on each sheet pan, and like stack them on top of each other. And here I am going up the stairs, with like
Mhm.
with like eight trays, right? And I would put them like at the corner by where the stairs are at, while one of the cops is actually passing them out, like handing it into the cells. And the reason they did that is because if they see me do that, or if somebody from a different race that doesn't like us, they would
Mhm.
grab us, try to do something to us through that tray slot.
Wow.
So that's why the cops would do it. So as soon as we were done with that, we would come back all over. So we'll do A section, B section, C section, come all the way back around with trash cans and pick up everybody's trash. And by that time, the tower cop, he would crack everybody's door, and they would kick all
Mhm.
their trays out. So now the tray slots are closed, and like it's a little bit more secure for us. And then we
Mhm.
have to pick up all the trash. And then they'll probably give us like 15 minutes in each section just to sweep, mop, and clean the showers right quick, and then
Mhm.
they'll give us our showers, and then we're back in the room. But it's a trip, right? Because going to prison, like I knew I wanted to change my life around, right? I wasn't
Mhm.
with all that stabbing people and
Right.
stuff like that, but I still didn't really know how to change. So I started using like my manipulation to kind of
Mhm.
like get around the system. So I became an asset to the Southerners because the cops were using me when I wasn't supposed to be out, when we're on lockdown. And I've
Mhm.
always been somebody that's very curious, right? So I would always look at cracks and under tables, and like trying to get creative with like finding like hiding places,
Right.
because we always had weapons on us and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So whenever the cops weren't looking, I would go by and grab all the weapons, and just like kind of like stash them in different places, so that if they found them in the day room, but they didn't find them on us, and we're not gonna lose a number of a person. We just
Right.
lose the weapon, and we'll get a weapon back again. But so yeah, so I started using my worth ethic basically to, like, you know what, I'm an asset. You're not gonna send me to go bust a mission because you need me, basically.
Mm. So it kind of helped you gain favor, in some ways.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so actually, as good as Delano was good to me,
Mhm.
in 2011, that's when my little brother got murdered. So my family was actually visiting me. It was my sister-in-law, my little nephew, my brother, and my mother. And there's only five people at a time that could come to visit. But
Right.
I just thought that my sister or my brother had drove my mom over. I didn't know that my stepfather was in the reception over there at the visiting
Mhm.
room.
Mhm.
So somebody called my dad and told him like something had happened to my little brother, and the cops over there are calling the visiting room, telling like, "Hey, tell Julio's family that they have to leave right away because something happened to my little brother." And so when the cop called me, and he's like, "Hey, Santos, like you have to get up out of here already." And I'm like, "I just got here, man. The visiting room is not even full. Like, because usually they terminate your visits if you got there first and the visiting room got packed, they terminate your visit." And I'm like,
Right.
"I just got here. Like, you're not gonna do that. Like, I have all this food that my family just bought me." And
Yeah.
they're like, "Look, they have to leave. I know what I'm telling you. They have to leave right now. Something happened to your little brother. He got in a car accident." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, he got into a car accident." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go back. I tell my mother, and she's like, "Well, just finish your food, and we'll go over there. He probably grabbed your dad's truck, and driving was really fast, and he crashed." So so my family ended up leaving.
Mhm.
The cop tells me, "Don't go next to the microwave. Have one of your friends' family heat up the food for you. Eat your food, and then you could go back to your building."
Mhm.
So now I'm to the point where I can't really eat, because I'm thinking about my little brother. Um, I just probably ate like a little burger, still had all this food. I gave it to my friend, like, hey, you could have this
Mhm.
stuff. And I go back. So now I'm going to get strip searched. And the cop was like, hey, where you from? And I'm like, nowhere. Why? He's like, was your brother a gang member? And I'm like, no, why? He's like, you know, your brother was shot, right? And I was like, he was shot. I'm like, well, why'd you tell me he was in a car accident? He's like, look, man, I didn't want your mom to worry. I didn't want her to have like a panic attack or something like that. And then she just like falls out in the visiting room.
Yeah.
So I immediately got back into the building. There was no program for some reason, regular 180. There was never no program really.
Right.
So I passed by one of my friend's cells, and I'm like, hey, bro, I need your phone. And he's like, what happened? I'm like, something happened to my little brother. They shot him. He's like, all right, just give me a little bit, because he had to put
Mhm.
away, right? I'm like, give me a
Right.
little bit and I'll fish it to you.
Mhm.
Like, okay. So finally I get it, like make a call, and they're like, hey, bro, it's not looking good. There's yellow tape all over the place, and
Mhm.
I think your brother got shot. And I'm like, well, I know he got shot, but I want to know if he's okay or not. So I send him back his phone, because he just gave me like a quick 15 minutes. And what I ended up doing, like later on, like 2 hours later, he sent it back to me. And this time I call my brother, and they're at the hospital, and they're crying, and they're like, man, your brother, he died. He got killed. He murdered him. And I was like, what the hell? So I was just like in shock.
Yeah.
Um, so immediately I start speaking to like the counselor and trying to like see what I can do so I could be present at my little brother's funeral. And they're like, man, you're a lifer. You're not going nowhere. You're stuck right here. So my little brother, like my mom always compares my little brother to me. He's like, he
Mhm.
was very kind, very generous, very sweet, very loving, like detail oriented and stuff like that. And he's like, I don't know why your brother didn't come out like that, but he was just like you. So so even though like that happened, I kind of like when I got arrested at 30 and got sentenced to 35 years to life.
Mhm.
I was like, man, this is gonna be my life, right? So I knew a lot of family members. I was gonna lose a lot of family members, and when that happened, so like I didn't really feel like. I mean, of course, I was sad and stuff, right? But I never
Mhm.
cried or nothing like that. It's not till later on that I actually started working on myself, and I had to like deal with those emotions and those feelings that I really really cried. And it's not till recently, right, that I
Mhm.
went back to LA, that I actually was able to visit my little brother at his grave, that I was like, man, my brother's gone. Like this is,
Mhm.
like, because there's stages in the grief process, right? That
Right.
was like the final step right there. And I was like, man, like, my brother's gone. I just couldn't believe it. And I just, so of course, I was a very emotional. It was a very emotional moment. And I felt
Right.
like so uncomfortable just being there, that I like literally just cleaned up his grave and just got up out of there. And I was like, man, this is bad.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's definitely stages, and I can't imagine what it felt like to hear that terrible news while being incarcerated. Were you were you angry? Were you in shock? Were you numb? How would you explain it in that moment?
A little bit of everything, right?
Mhm.
So of course, I was still involved with the gang.
Mhm.
I would call my friends and stuff like that. And I remember calling one of them, and they're like, "What's up? Do you want us to go put in some work or what?" And I just stood quiet, right? And I started thinking like, my little brother was an innocent bystander. He wasn't from the gang. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And if I send somebody to that neighborhood, first of all, I don't really know if it's that neighborhood or not, right?
Mhm.
If I send them over there, there's a possibility that when my homies go over there, something's gonna happen to somebody else that's an innocent bystander as well. And I just started thinking like about like the ripple effect of so many innocent lives just being lost to senseless gang violence, and
Mhm.
I was like, nah, bro, like, and this is how I kind of like justified it, right? Because I
Mhm.
still, of course, I still wanted that image, and
Right.
I'm like, nah, I want to get that person that actually did it. So unless you know who did it, don't go over there.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see how that would feel like the thing to do in that moment. Like you want that personal, you know, revenge, or I just it's so crazy to think like I've had a loved one before where I've had to relay a message that, a relative has passed, from natural causes, but even still, it felt so, it doesn't feel right. I felt like, gosh, how do I tell him, get this word to him? Like through, a letter, through the phone call, through, the chaplain. It's hard to imagine that, you actually heard it even from a guard that told you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, Moving on from that, how did you sort of cope going forward? Did you just kind of try and tuck it away and go on about your time?
Um, so I mean, of course, still having that gang mentality and stuff like that. I started justifying having a cell phone in prison. My family
Mhm.
needs me. They're going through it. So I start calling other friends and like trying to arrange me getting a cell phone in prison. So I
Yeah.
finally did end up getting a cell phone in prison. But like looking back, most of the time I was just trying to like meet girls, talk to the homies, or like even rent out my phone just so I could get some
Mhm.
canteen and stuff like that. But and I wasn't really talking to my family that much. It was like even though I had a cell phone, most of my phone calls with my family were still like that wall phone, 15-minute phone calls, and
Yeah.
just knowing that they're okay and they know I'm okay, or basically just like even being like selfish, like when I needed something, like hey, I need a
Mhm.
package, here's my list, and I'm like telling them all these different numbers and order this, and if they don't have that, and so man, the mentality, um, but also like how I cope with things, like in the past, it was I mean, I wasn't a good person, I
Yeah.
really wasn't.
Yeah. Was there something, that took place, or was there a moment that you can recall where you sort of shifted the way you thought and thought maybe there's a chance I can go home?
So it wasn't really like a chance of me going home, but it was definitely the murder of my little brother. Soon after that, in 2013, that's when I got moved to Calipat, and Calipatria State Prison. Uh, to me, that's the most dangerous prison. Even more dangerous than High Desert, than any level 4 180. It's a level
Mhm.
4 270, different design, but that
Mhm.
prison was rocking. So when I got there, I was only there for 2 years, luckily, right? And throughout
Mhm.
those 2 years, there was literally like 8 riots throughout the whole prison, and it was constantly something going on. But as soon
Mhm.
as I got there, I started looking at the TV, and the TV had like all these courses and stuff like that. Like I think it was called TLN or TCL or something like that.
Mhm.
Anger management and stress reduction and relationship building and all these different little things, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, I just wanted a little certificate and just to do something, because of,
Mhm.
again, I had a cell phone at Calipat. I sold mine when I left Delano and went to
Mhm.
Calipat and got a cell phone right away as well. And by that time, I was actually with my ex girlfriend. So she was my sweetheart from junior high school, and she had found
Mhm.
out that my little brother got murdered. And when she found out that I was in prison, she thought that I had went and retaliated and came to prison because of my little brother. So when I
Mhm.
called her and let her know what actually happened, she was like in shock. So basically, when I was in junior high school with her and we were boyfriend and girlfriend, it didn't work out. We were too young. So
Yeah.
we tried it all over again, and we were probably with each other for like 3 or 4 years after that.
Mhm.
But but what why the reason why I brought her up is because she was like a big reason why I changed. Uh,
Mhm.
she didn't want to be with me no more because she was with me with Delano and then like the 2 extra years at Calipat. And she was just like telling me like, man, you're very possessive, you're very controlling, you're a liar, you're a manipulator, you're selfish, you're all these different things, insecure and you're
Mhm.
arrogant and all these different things, right? And I'm like, wow. So she was this girl that was like doing very well, like working in the fashion industry. She was like a regional manager, driving BMWs, has her own house, and
Mhm.
wearing stuff that I can't probably pronounce and stuff like that, right? But so she's like, and this is how warped my mentality is, right? To
Okay.
me, what love equated was that she bought me my packages, that she bought me canteen, and she took care of me. And so
Yeah.
what this dude once asked me, he was like, "Hey, why do you like this girl?" And I was like, "Oh, she does this for me, she does that for me, this, and that." And he's like, "Did you love her?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, I was in love with her, bro. Like I miss her." And he's like,
Hmm.
"You really love her though?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Right now that you mentioned all this stuff, you just mentioned nothing but materialistic things, like the things that she does for you. You didn't mention one quality about her." And I was like, "Wow." So then, like after she broke up to me and she said all those different things that I was, it made me
Hmm.
realize, like, you know what? That's really who I am. So that was like a slap in the face for me.
Yeah.
So I enrolled into college, and and still having one foot in and one foot out. And I
Hmm.
say that because I'm working at the education department at Calipatria, and here I am because of where I work. I'm taking like weapons to my job and hiding them over there because my job is like I'm working at the main education office, and I'm the only person working there, the only inmate, and
Hmm.
they love me. Again, my worth ethic.
Yeah.
And there were several times that there was actually riots outside, and the same principal from the place was like, "I'm not letting you out there because I know that there's blacks on this blacktop
Hmm.
outside, and if you go out there, you're gonna get into trouble because I know what you have to do. I know what your politics are like."
Right.
So that job saved me from like at least 3 riots on our yard while my yard was out there, my building actually,
Mhm.
and it was a blessing, like looking back, all throughout my incarceration, God was with me. I didn't realize it then, but I look back today and I'm like, man, he was always guiding me because always keeping me away from certain things from happening. Just I
Mhm.
mean, they say God works in mysterious ways, and I really believe that. I really
Yeah.
believe that. But
I
so after that, I was there only for 2 years. I had broken up with my girlfriend. I'm all alone now, and they transferred me like to Blythe, Ironwood State Prison, level
Mhm.
3. And
Mhm.
it's funny, right? I always use this like this little diagram of this book I read. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And
Okay.
it starts with a comfort zone. It's a bullseye, right? Your comfort zone is this big. As the
Mhm.
bullseye gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so a lot of people like to stay in your comfort zone. And
Yeah.
what my comfort zone was like, you know what? I was at High Desert. I was comfortable right there. I didn't want to go nowhere after I, got my little groove on.
Yeah.
And so now I have to go to the shoe. And as crazy as it sounds, I was comfortable in the shoe because of the people that I was around. And I didn't want
Mhm.
to leave there. So then I went to Delano. I got comfortable at Delano and I didn't want to leave there. So with your comfort zone, every risk that you take, your comfort zone is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? And even though we're
Mhm.
using for something negative, I started to use that same book in something positive. So when I got to Ironwood, I now so first I was doing Coastline College, and then I started doing Palo Verde College. Uh,
Mhm.
I got into college, and I was only taking like 2 classes. I'm like people taking up to 6 to 8 classes in a semester, and I'm like, man, you guys are crazy. Like, what the hell? Like, your life is just being in the books. Like, I want
Yeah.
to be able to watch TV. I want to be able to go to yard. I want to be able to have a life outside of college.
Mhm.
Um, so during that time, they signed me up for self help groups. This was my first time ever actually going into a group, right? And
Mhm.
I don't want to go in there. I don't want to have to speak. I don't want to have to do this and that. They're like, bro, just go. You'll be all right. And I'm like, all right. So it started like with AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, then NA,
Yeah.
Narcotics Anonymous, then CGA. And literally Monday through Friday, I had like 2 groups that I would go to Monday through Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I would kind of like not even feel like myself because I didn't go to my groups, right? They didn't run groups on the weekends. Um, so as people started leaving from the prison, they're like, "Hey, bro, you've been in that group pretty long time. We're gonna need you to step up. We want you to be a facilitator." So going back to my example of the comfort zone, right? Like
Mhm.
my comfort zone was just doing college, but then I took a risk and started going to groups. So it grew a little bit, right? Then
Mhm.
I was kind of like scared of public speaking. I became a facilitator. It grew a little bigger. Because I was a facilitator, I got offered a job at the substance abuse program, which we call it SAP, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted me to be a mentor back there. They're like, because it's like you have a lot of insight, you take a responsibility for your crime, and we want you
Mhm.
to like the way that you speak, you're very motivational, inspirational, and we want people to get some of that. So they sent me to the SAP program. So now literally my day is like from 6 in the morning, going to breakfast, going to work, getting out at 1:30. At 2 o'clock, I have to be in groups, and then I would go NA, CGA, or whatever lifers group, and then I
Mhm.
had last group was just ACP from 6:30 to 8:30, and then I would go back into my cell, take a quick shower, and lights out basically, right? And that
Okay.
was literally my time from 2015 all the way to 2017. That's what I was doing every day. Or in between, I would still have to do college work and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And at the SAP program, my boss, she was a CC3, which is like equivalent to like a assistant warden kind of thing, right?
Okay.
She's like, look, I think you're very good at what you do, and I want you to learn some more skills, and I want to send you to Solano State Prison to become a certified drug and alcohol counselor. And I'm like, for what or what? She's like, I think you'd be great at this. And
Mhm.
I'm at Ironwood. That even though I'm doing all these great things at Ironwood, as soon as that bar locks and my door is closed and the cop can't come in my room, my cell no more, I'm taking down the light and grabbing my phone, and I'm up all night on the phone, talking to girls, talking to my friends, whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't want to go to Solano because that means I have to get rid of my phone. Like the cops don't even mess with me because I look good outside, like I'm
Right.
the super programmer. I'm never getting into trouble. And I come in my cell and I'm like, I have my phone, right? I'm
Yeah.
comfortable. So
Mhm.
again, I got out of my comfort zone, took a risk, and went to Solano. And I got certified as a drug and alcohol counselor for the Offender Mentor Certification Program, OMCP. And that was like one of my biggest accomplishments to this
Yeah.
day. But
That's
and I've
amazing.
also, I'm sorry,
That's amazing. Yeah.
thank you. I've noticed something about myself that most of the time people believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and
Mhm.
that little push has got me to where I'm at today. Where because that self doubt, that little voice inside your head told me like, shit for brains, you're not good enough and stuff like that. You'll never amount to anything. So I always used to drive that was where my drive was at, like nothing. But then
Yeah.
once I started realizing, like, you know what, you're going to college, you made the dean's list, you're like 3 classes away from getting your AA. The
Mhm.
CCC wants you to become a drug and alcohol counselor because what you love doing, you're very great at. And here I am, like little stepping stones to setting me up for my big day, right? Which
Mhm.
going to a parole board. And around that time when I'm at Ironwood, they had just passed AB 260, which is
Mhm.
16 and under. If you're a lifer, 16 and under, and then 261 was like 18 and under, and then
Mhm.
21 and under. I think 23 and under, and then it finally got to 25 and under.
Right.
But all this time I thought that I had committed my crime when I was 26 years old. I had miscalculated like by some time, right? So
Okay.
one day when I'm at Solano, they give me this paper in the mail, and they're like that I'm going to board in 2025 because I'm a YOP, a youth offender, and I'm
Mhm.
like, that doesn't make sense. So then I started making the math, and I'm like, oh my god, I was literally like 7 days away from being 26 years old, and I wouldn't have qualified for that law. And I was
Wow.
like, wow. So so now it's what 2017 and 2025 is like right around the corner, right? So I'm
Mhm.
already doing good. I have to keep doing what I'm doing. So through that program, there was like by that time there was like a lot of mentors already, but they weren't at all the prisons yet. Now the
Mhm.
program has blown up and it's like at a lot of prisons, right? But anyways, before that, they were like, if a prison sent you, they want you back. So you have to go back for like at least a year, and then they'll transfer you wherever you want. So when I got to Solano, I'm at a level 2, first time ever, level 2. I mean, there's no doors. You come in the room, in the building whenever you want, in and out.
Mhm.
And when I first got there, I'm like, excuse me, I can't live
Mhm.
here. Like these people are all up on my business, and but it was a blessing at the same time because there was phones there. But now that I'm
Mhm.
too good, I mean, I'm kind of like being held accountable, right?
Yeah.
And people want to be in my shoes because they're looking at me like, like, oh, this dude's doing great. But if they see me messing up, of course they're gonna throw me under the bus, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a blessing for me as well. Another blessing by God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I finished the program and they sent me back to Ironwood. So my boss, she was still there at the CC3. She tells me, Julio, thank you very much. I see that the program worked for you. Because I guess I did like a little speech at one of the graduations
Mm-hmm.
of my transformation, right? And I literally started crying when I started talking about my stepfather and my father and, like the stuff that I've been through. And she's like, that's a real testament of you putting in the work and you healing. And then like, you're not afraid to cry in front of men and stuff like that. So she's like, I want you to put all your chronos together, all your certificates, and we're going to send them to the warden so that they could put you up for a commutation of sentence. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, thank you. She's like, I'm also put you for recall of sentence, which is 1170D. So she did that for me and for another one of my friends named Gerald Seipert.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a beautiful thing, right? We both got letters back right away from that recall of census 1170D. They did like this huge investigation on me. They called the cops that were in my building. One day, one of them called me into the office and they're like, "Hey, somebody called me from Sacramento." And they were asking like what kind of inmate you were, and I told them like he programs, he does this, he does that. So I'm just letting you know somebody's looking into your file. And then like later, they gave me like the discovery that that my judge had already retired, but however,
Mm-hmm.
whoever stepped up for him, that they had denied me for my recall of sentence 1170D, and I was like, I was kind of like bummed out, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I'm doing all this work for nothing, really.
Mm-hmm.
But and even that statement is very selfish, right? Because at the end of the day, I murdered Mr. Jesus Leon, and here I am, like worried about me now, like trying to get out because people are finally getting out. Um, so I started realizing, like, you know what? If this is my destiny to spend the rest of my life in prison, so be it. Like here I am. I have another opportunity. I could see my family. I could call them. I'm doing good. I didn't feel like I was locked up anymore because I'm actually helping people. And my
Mm-hmm.
big thing was if I can help one person change the way they think, that's actually going to get out. I know that my family is going to be safer out there. I know that a lot of my loved ones are going to be out there safer. So I started changing the way that I thought, because I was like still incarcerated. So I was basically just like doing all this stuff to make it look good, just in case I got an opportunity to go in front of the board. But then once
Mm-hmm.
I accepted it as, you know what, this is who I am. This is what God had in plan for me, to help people and stuff like that. So I
Right.
embraced it, and then I was finally free.
Wow. That's amazing. That is so inspiring to hear that. And it's like having someone believe in you. It seems like that really sort of gave you that push that you needed, right? Like,
Definitely.
yeah. So you go before, did you go before board or how did that work?
So so COVID hit. When I went back to Ironwood, they
Hmm.
they put in the application, COVID hit, and now I'm stuck. They weren't doing no transfers, they weren't doing anything. People are just being stuck completely. And I finally got transferred to another level two.
Hmm.
So I went to level two, and I'm just going about my daily business. This was after COVID. So I got transferred in 2021, like around August or something. So
Hmm.
I was only there for like 6 months. And at the beginning, like January 6th of 2022, my friend, like, because everywhere I was going, I was already running into a lot of guys that were doing good. And like the more good you do is like you go from level 4, level 3, level 2, and you start going lower and lower. So the
Right.
same people with the same mentalities are like basically shifting down, and
Hmm.
you're creating a more positive network of just friends and stuff.
Right.
Um, and so he's like, "Hey, bro, oh, so we're actually on a little modified program because COVID was coming up again. So
Hmm.
all the buildings are like shut down. But however, the program office is still running. They have to run. And he comes and he's like, "Hey, bro, you're going home." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're going home." And I was like, "What are you talking about, bro?" He's like, the governor gave you clemency." And I was like, "Clemency?" I was like, "I didn't file for no clemency. I filed for commutation." He's like, bro, that's what the counselor just told me. He's like, get ready because they're gonna call you in right now. So I was inside the building teaching some paisanos like the whole board process, from like accepting responsibility, showing remorse,
Mhm.
having insight. I was just basically breaking everything down. I was doing a little class inside the little day room, and I was like, "Hey, time out! I'm gonna let my friend take over because I have to go do something. They're calling me for the program office." So I go in there and I sit down, and the counselor that I had was pretty cool. He used to talk to me
Mhm.
like he was like my childhood friend or something. And he's like, "Hey, Santos, man, cabron." He's like, "Congratulations." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "They commuted your sentence." And I'm like, "What?" So, because my friend was like, act surprised, because I don't want him to know that I told you.
Yeah.
Like, for real? And he's like, "Yeah, they commuted your sentence." And I'm like, "How do you know?" He's like, "Look, they just sent me this." So he pulls it up on his computer, right? And he's
Mhm.
showing me. And he's like, "Man, what did you do to do this?" And I start telling him the little story about my boss, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Man, I'm really proud of you." He's like, "You really don't hear about nobody getting commutations, and here you go, you got one." He's like,
Mhm.
"So look, they literally have to take you to board within 6 months from now." So luckily, all this time, because in prison, if you have some kind of computer access, if you got access to like a printer, that's like gold. You better take advantage of it, because if
Okay.
you don't, it's going to be hard. So
Mhm.
all that time I was like constantly like updating relapse prevention plans, updating parole plans, doing my remorse letters, writing
Mhm.
insight papers, all these different things that I was doing, right? Any like I did book reports on any book that I
Mhm.
read. I was doing like my file was like probably like this big, of just nothing but positive chronos, certificates, and like my whole life in prison, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so so I had all my paperwork basically ready, and
Mhm.
so he's like, "You're going to go to board in 6 months, so get ready." So now it's like, wow, it's like, like it changed the way that I was thinking. I was like, I'm actually going to get an opportunity to go home. Because
Mhm.
look, right now, we're in 2024, and I wasn't supposed to go to board till the next year, right?
Wow.
So
So crazy.
yeah, so everything happened so fast. I'm glad that I got ready before it, because if you
Mhm.
actually wait when they tell you you're going in 6 months, that's not enough time to actually get ready to go to board and actually get a date. So one of my friends that I met inside of prison, my best friend Jimmy Barstow, I was calling him and I was like, "Hey, bro, so I'm going to board, and this is my lawyer. They just gave me my lawyer. He's a public defender, and
Mhm.
can you look him up on the computer, see how he is or whatever?" And he tells me, he's like, "That's not your lawyer." And I'm like, "Nah, my counselor just told me that's my lawyer." He's like, "Nah, bro, I got you Charles Carbone." And I'm like, "For real?" So Charles Carbone was one of those lawyers that helped a lot of the guys get out of the shoe when they had like that huge hunger strike. He was like very big on what was going on right there. And he's like,
Nice.
"Look, I got my opportunity. I'm out here." He's like, "Newsom is in office. We don't know how long he's going to be in office for." He's like, "I want you to get out on your first try. So I'm going to get
Mhm.
you this lawyer, even though I know you don't need this lawyer, because while we were at Solano, there's nothing but like that OMCP program. They
Mhm.
used to call us like the elite, smartest guys in prison that have to do with like self help, because you have to go through like a screening process to get into that program. Not just anybody's going to get in there. So I used
Okay.
to hang out with my Asian friend Bruce Fan. I used to hang out with Jimmy Barstow, with Henry Dean, and this is people with different races, right? And we're sitting at a table, different races, and they're like, "Man, this is what like rehabilitation really looks like." At level
Yes.
4, you can't do that. You can't sit at a table and chop it up with somebody like that, because they're either
Mhm.
think that you're politicking, or you're selling drugs, or you're buying drugs or something. But
Right.
that's what my change looked like. And even though there's a lot of active Sureños still at that prison, they seen my get down and where my mentality was at. So when they would like before, like if something were gonna happen, they'll pass a kite and let everybody know. I was
Mhm.
to the point where they were leaving me out of the information, because it's like, I know he's doing good, but now it's to kind of like to the point where like I don't know if we could trust him or not, because
Yeah.
he's not really there with us no more. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
It does. I get it. Yeah. It
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
So all that work that we put on that table, all of those
Mhm.
guys that have been, so my friend Lalo, he was actually an ex-northerner. He got out. He's married
Mhm.
already. Just recently went to his wedding. Had a beautiful wedding. My friend Jimmy Barstow, he went to board, got out on his first try, and so like now it's my turn, right? So I go to board. I had like a Chappelle, which is he used to be a warden at St. Quentin, and I had some Asian guy. I can't remember his name though. He was
Mhm.
a new. No, actually, he was Indian. He was like a newer dude. So they started questioning me, like from what happened to who were you then, who are you now, and how would you deal with this stuff differently, and like the biggest thing, the biggest question that I remember they asked me
Mhm.
was like how do we know that you won't commit the same crime? And I'm like, look, I'm actually granted another opportunity in life, if you find me suitable. And there's nothing that I would do to jeopardize that. The person that I am today in front of you is somebody that wants to help people, bring
Mhm.
awareness to the senseless crimes that we commit, the mentality, the that just doesn't make sense. And so whatever I told them on that day, like I sold it to them, and they were like, Mr. Julio Santos, we find you suitable. And I was just like, wow. Like I was just in complete shock. My co-defendant is actually still inside of prison right now. And
Awesome.
it hurts me because there's really nothing I can do for him because I'm still on parole. So one of my
Right.
conditions is don't reach out to your co-defendants or anything like that.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
during the time. So they told you right then and there that they found you suitable. That
Yes.
I can only imagine what that felt like.
And it was like so surreal. I started calling my family members. So actually my lawyer called my family. He called my friend Jimmy Barstow. He called everybody. But
Mhm.
once they granted me parole, now I have to go through this process of they're going through all the paperwork, make sure they
Mhm.
cross all their T's and dotted their I's. And
Right.
so once the board gets the paperwork ready, they put it in front of the governor's desk, and he has the ultimate decision to sign. So it's
Mhm.
really anywhere from 120 to 150 days that you're getting out after you get your date. And that was the longest time of my life that I spent in prison, those last 6 months, because
Wow.
each and every day I'm like going to see my counselor. Has anything
Mhm.
changed on my file? What's up with this? What's up with that? And I'm hearing about people going home, and I'm like, how long did it take you to go home? Like, how many
Mhm.
days was it till they finally give you your decision? And how many days after that? And it was like literally, I was like all over everything, trying to like do it all. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, that's crazy. Like how much it's stressful. If I could do something to change that, I would
Mhm.
change it. That's a really stressful situation right there.
Oh, I
I
bet
believe
it
I
is.
got all my gray hair. Look.
Just those last 6 months, huh? I believe it. Wow, that is so amazing to hear that way that played out for you. Upon your release, getting out, did you go into, like, a home, or how did that work for you?
So one thing I knew for sure when I did my parole plans is that I
Mhm.
didn't want to go back to LA. I'm actually out here in the Bay now, and the main reason is because my mother's house is out there. It's still in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And even though when I went back to the neighborhood, that whole area got gentrified. Like I literally
Mhm.
went to breakfast on a street where before, if you let like the moment that you jump out of a car, you're getting shot at and stuff like that. So I'm at a pizza parlor eating breakfast, and as soon as I walk to the patio, there's like all these little white kids eating with their mothers. They're having like a little breakfast date with the kids, and I'm
Yeah.
like, man, this is crazy. Why couldn't they gentrify this area when I was younger? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it took all
Yeah.
these years, all these people lost their lives, and all these different things had to happen for these people to get here. And I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is just something else. But so I chose to come to the Bay Area. I went to a transitional home
Mhm.
for 6 months, and during those 6 months, like within a week, I was already working. I was working for a nonprofit organization, and then
Mhm.
I got promoted to a case manager working at a homeless shelter. And right now, I'm actually being considered to be a director for that same homeless shelter.
Oh.
But also, like I'm not I'm not content with what the money that I'm making right now and what I'm doing.
Mhm.
Like I want more, and I'm like so motivated I'm an ambitious person, right? So
That's
what I've
good.
been paying attention to is like the things that are not working at our shelter and the
Hmm.
things that are not working in the Bay Area as far as like the homeless crisis. And I'm actually trying to come up with a solution. And me and a couple of friends are actually working on starting our own nonprofit.
That's awesome. I
Yeah,
think that would be great. I mean, there's such a need for it right now, anyways, right?
everywhere,
Yeah,
not just the Bay Area. Literally everywhere you go, there's like so much homelessness.
yeah, everywhere. That is
Yeah,
so true. I love that you're really paying it forward and doing that and using all of the things that you learned and the information you gathered to do something positive for the community still. Um, what advice would you have, for someone out there that is hoping to make it home, and they're really not sure what to do? Would you just say dive into programs? What could they do to help themselves?
um you know what, I have a very good friend of mine. He was actually like somebody I looked up to in prison because
Hmm.
sometimes I couldn't find like my own answers. And when I would hear him talk about his story, even though he was a different race, I could relate a lot to his childhood and stuff like that, right? But
Hmm.
he's still inside right now. And he, you know, he wrote to me through that GTL app, and he was
Hmm.
like, "Look, bro, I thought because I had already wrote him like a support letter because I thought he was going to go to board pretty soon." So he sends me a message and he's like, "Hey, bro, they messed up. They miscalculated my days, and I have to wait an extra 2 years to go to board." And I'm like, "Damn, like I know what he's going through right now
Yeah.
because at one point I felt like I was doing all this for nothing, like I stated earlier.
Hmm.
But then when I started realizing, like, you know what, I committed murder. I murdered Mr. Jesus Leon. I took Mr. Jesus Leon away from his family. I took him away from his siblings. I don't even like I I dehumanized Mr. Jesus Leon so much that I didn't really even know anything about him because I took a plea bargain. I wasn't able to hear who he was as a person, like the things that I took away from him. So I completely don't know anything about him. I just know that I murdered him. That
Hmm.
he was young and I shot him to the point where he's dead, right? And
Yeah.
once I started to like really accept this, like, you know what, like if this is the rest of my life, I'm gonna spend it honoring Mr. Jesus Leon and bringing awareness of where my type of lifestyle could lead you. Because remember,
Hmm.
I always carried a gun. I got this 30-round clip. I got this beautiful truck. I'm selling drugs. I got women. I got everything that I want. I'm living this life that's just really like a mirage, basically, right?
Right.
But it was it was very irrational, and it was very like there was really no it was like meaningless basically. I was just living through a day, constantly getting high, looking for the next woman to get at or whatever,
Hmm.
or something to come up on. It was just like very grimy, and that's not really who I am. And so what I would the biggest advice I would say is don't give up and keep doing what you're doing, but find purpose within yourself so that you can be free inside.
Hmm.
And for me, what really helped me was my spirituality, just putting all my burdens in God and always constantly praying. And that was like huge for me, just going to church and just being around brothers. I remember praying, and like the brothers would put their arms around my back, right? And just like that feeling that I felt like the Holy Spirit was inside of me. It was like a
Yeah.
feeling I can't even describe, right? But I
Hmm.
just felt that whatever I had going on in here was just like taken away, and like my burdens were gone at that moment. And it was just like a blessing for me.
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. I feel like a lot of people can learn from that, and that's encouraging, for many people, not even just people who are incarcerated, just for people in general, that, we do need that. We need that comfort and that fellowship, to help build us up.
Definitely.
So I thank you so much for telling, I'm sure this is just bits and pieces of your life story, but there's so much more ahead of you. And I hope to stay in touch and hear more about what you have planned in the future. So thank
Yes.
you, Julio. I appreciate it. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
you'd like to leave the people with before we sign out?
So first of all, I just want to thank you for providing a platform just to bring awareness and shine the light on something that's like really it's not real. Like it's like these lies that we start believing in ourselves, you know. But it's not until I actually started making decisions for myself that I was able to be successful. And I would
Mhm.
just say like you're only as sick as your secrets, you know. I know that a lot of people could probably relate to my story, but
Yeah.
what I would say to anyone is find somebody that you could really rely on and share what you're whatever you're going through, you know.
Mhm.
That's life changing, just to be able to let it go. If you keep it inside, it's gonna basically make you rot. There's this book I also read by Brene Brown, and she's like this shame expert, right? And she says that that shame thrives in darkness, and that
Mm.
darkness means like it's inside of you, you know. You're not putting it out to light, but the moment that you put it out to light, shade can't live there. I mean, shame can't live there no more, right? So it's important to talk about those things that are holding you captive within your own body, and just release it. Find somebody that you trust, and I promise you that you'll feel a lot better when you do so.
Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely expose it, let it go, and release it.
Yes.
For sure. Thank you so much again. We will definitely stay in touch. If anyone that is watching this has any questions, go ahead and drop them below. And Julio and I will get back to you. We appreciate your time so much. And I want everyone to leave this and know to always keep your heart convicted. Everyone have a good day. God bless.
Thank you.